Welcome to Buckets, coming to you live from our Tommy John's home studios. This is your Best Bets episode for Wednesday, November 13th in the association. We'll go over best bets. We got a same game parlay for you that we've cooked up in the lab, as well as some great caps specifically on OKC versus whatever is left of the Pelicans, because the two guys I have with me just decided to beat the shit out of that poor team. Joe Delara, Michael Fiddle. You can catch Joe in the Action Network app and on Twitter at Joe Delara. He will also be joining me on tomorrow night on NBA League Pass. You can catch us on Magic Pacers for NBA Bet Stream. You go to the streams button when you open up the game, and you click on the streams button, and it'll say NBA Bet Stream, and you can catch me and Joe. We're over there with DraftKings Sportsbook. We'll be breaking down the whole game, live bets, lots of stuff. It's going to be a fun game. I have an endless amount of takes on Magic and Pacers, and we'll have a lot of bets that I'll be sweating during that game. So make sure to check that out. Also join Michael Fiddle. He's Fiddle's Picks on Twitter and the Action Network app. You can catch him over at his Substack as well. You have other things. Where do you want to send people to, Fiddle? Because I know that you've got like 17 different links up. Where do you want to send people besides the Advantage Sports Betting Podcast?
If you are a reader, then go to the Fiddle's Picks Substack. And if you are a listener, check out the Advantage Sports Betting Podcast.
Okay. And if you're a listener too, check out Joe Delara's Cash That podcast. He's got noted sicko Brandon Anderson on there quite a bit, as well as other folks around. It's really great. They do picks and recs. It's pretty awesome. All sorts of great stuff from our guys. All right. We are coming to you on Tuesday night after the start of the NBA Cup. That Joe, the big one, the Atlanta Hawks as 16. So Brad Rowland, who does Locked On Hawks, hit me and was like, hey, I can't find this anything going back further than 2010. Can you find me any time in which the Hawks have been a 16.5 point favorite or worse? And so I looked it up over at Killer Sports. Yeah, they have not been ever they've been a 16, but they have never been a 16.5 point dog or worse until tonight, since we have data going back to 1995, and they won outright. They won outright in Boston. Jaylen Brown has a massive night, but misses a ton of free throws. No Trae Young. Dyson Daniels? Like 28, 13, and 6 steals? No, 27 assists and 6 steals. Sick night from Dyson Daniels, who's probably put himself in the most improved player conversation. But this is fundamentally going to change the odds on these groups. What's your big takeaway from an NBA Cup perspective on the Celtics' loss to the Hawks?
I mean, the Celtics were odds-on favorites to win the NBA Cup. They were like a minus 300 to advance. So now you have this team who was minus like 300 to advance to the quarterfinals, and they've got the undefeated Cleveland Cavaliers in their group. Like, that's the game. Like, that's going to come. The Boston Celtics could be out early already. I think that's what makes this fun with the NBA Cup. It's why it's so much more fun to bet on a lot of these long shots, because you only need to lose like one game and you're out. The way that the standings are, the way that this format is. So this is going to give, like, if you've got a locked in bet on a title, like on a winner or an MVP, like some of the long shots that we put out there in the Action Network app, you've got to be feeling way better already just because Boston lost. And even though it's a 1 point loss, so like they're technically like, that's like about as good of a loss as you can have, it's still a loss, and it wasn't to the Cavs. So obviously, like, we'll see how the rest of the group kind of shakes out, but it's entirely possible Cavs go win this group. Cavs beat Boston. Boston gets left out here, even if they go and win across the board the rest of the games.
What's going to be amazing for me is when the Atlanta Hawks win the NBA Cup and still go under, and Jim Turvey has to deal with them winning the NBA Cup and still going under on their win total.
Yeah, because
that would also hurt Fiddle here, since he stole the Atlanta Hawks over as the number 1 pick from Jim Turvey. So hope that doesn't happen after. Fiddle still, by the way, if Fiddle sounds terse tonight, we were on the podcast. We came on, and I was a little bit late, and he was sweating the under on the Jazz Suns game. Fiddle, do you want to relate what happened?
Yeah, Will Hardy's my least favorite coach in the league right now. He's going to get a strongly worded email in his inbox tomorrow. Might even handwrite it and send it to the facility. That game was live total like 217.5 in the fourth quarter at the start of the quarter. 66 point quarter. in which the Jazz start intentionally fouling down 3 possessions with 30 seconds left. So the Jazz start playing for the point differential in a loss. That is the most absurd thing I've ever seen. It's understandable to do it in a win. Why do the Utah Jazz think that they're going to roll off and go 3-1 and want to get point differential in game? That was ridiculous. I am slightly lucky that Devin Booker missed one of those late free throws, because that would have actually caused a loss instead of a push. But one of the worst pushes I've ever, it feels like a bad beat. It feels like an absolute gut check right now.
Yeah, it's rough. We'll be posting. I accidentally hit record before that happened, and so we have a recording of it. I don't know, my finger just slipped. I don't know why that
wild. It's
why
crazy.
that happened. So Joe, who is your big long shot that you played in the East?
Obviously, the big long shot is the big bodega, Karl Anthony Towns, 100-1 to be the NBA Cup MVP. He looked great today, I'll tell you that. And now that they just beat the Philadelphia 76ers, you look at the rest of that group, and obviously the Orlando Magic have looked and have continued to look better without Paolo. I think as they're kind of getting accustomed to life without him to a degree. But the rest of that group is garbage. We got the Hornets and the Nets. So 100-1, it was just a bonkers number to me. I had to get some. It was difficult to get some, but I had to get some.
You say one man's garbage is another man's treasure, because I definitely put in a bet on the Hornets, being like, they could do this. They could do this. And then they lost by 20 to the Magic in game 1. The other one I did put in, though, is I bet the Bulls to win the group. So that one, that's like the live one, is if the Bulls can steal one from Cleveland with Boston losing now, I might be able to sneak that one out. We'll see what happens with the NBA Cup as it rolls along. Fiddle, you know this last night. You talked about this on the Best Bets episode, and you were texting me and Jim in our Slack about unders for the Cup, that these came out and they all got steamed down, and we're looking at a majority under night now in the association. What do you kind of make of that?
Yeah, there was extreme under movement all at once. Like every single game was popped at the same time towards the under. And based on the books that it happened, based on where those places are located and where they take bets, I was like 95% sure this came from Vegas. And I thought it was probably syndicate action, just playing into every single under. Like you never know those things for sure, but I use the term indicators to kind of build what's probably happening in the market. So when every single total moved significantly towards the under in a matter of moments, it's one of the rarest things I've ever seen. I was just lucky. I was in front of my computer and watching it happen so that I could pick off some of the books that still had the original numbers posted. But like Suns Jazz, that one that I got the under 232 that pushed, closes at 226. Every single game takes extreme. Knicks Sixers under 217 closes around 212. Hawks Celtics was up to 236 at one point and closes at 225. So it's some of the largest movement in totals I've seen all season, and I think that's something that we need to forecast into Fridays and Tuesdays moving forward for the next few weeks. Like, be aware if potential under movement comes. Maybe we start to go over later. I don't know the way these things get priced, but this was so eye-opening that I know that I have to be available Friday and at my screen, because there might be massive opportunities as these numbers start to fall again.
I was surprised because the first 2 nights of the tournament last year went over, and I remember that very clearly. And the data kind of backs up that actually those games went over, and by the end of it, kind of the closing line number came out about even. It just like there wasn't like a real big edge there. I do think like one of the problems that's going to be that is tough is I wonder if there's like the teams that are interested in the Cup are going to go one way, and the teams that are not interested are going to go the other. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if that's the over or the under. Like I don't know if that means like, because you can win the Cup just by basically just gunning on offense. That's how the Pacers got there last year.
Yeah.
It's just like gun. So I think it's kind of an interesting question. I'll be very curious to see what happens on Friday, and we'll talk about it on the Sunday show with Jim and Joe on Future Jays. We'll talk more NBA Cup after the first full set of games in the Cup. All right, let's do best bets on the Wednesday slate. Once again, you can catch me and Joe on NBA Bet Stream for Pacers Magic. I will have a bet on the under in that game. as I will bet that and not just put up a prop on a completely hilariously terrible contest like some people. Let's go around the table and give our best bets for Wednesday. Fiddle, let's start with you.
Pelicans and Thunder over 223.
Joe DeLera, what is your cowardly bullshit you're going to put on this podcast?
I've got two pieces of cowardly bullshit. And I like Jalen Williams over 26.5 points plus rebounds in that Thunder Pelicans barn burner that we're going to see with Fiddle's pick over there. And I also like Benedict Mathurin over 18.5 points in that Pacers and Magic game.
Okay, let's the Pelicans without, let's see if I can do this from memory. DeJounte Murray, Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, and Jose Alvarado. Trey Murphy is now back. So only 4 of their most important 6 players. I've had made that joke earlier to some friends, and I said, no, everyone for the Pelicans that's important is hurt. And then I paused and was like, Brandon Ingram is available to play. So that's how that goes. The Jalen Williams one I think is interesting. Give me the cap on the Jalen Williams pick.
So the biggest thing is obviously there's no Chet now, and Oklahoma City doesn't really have a center. Like we just don't have one, and we're not even going to go try to sign one really. So we're just going to play Jalen Williams at the 5 for a decent chunk of the game, and it is pretty effective, honestly. Had 8 rebounds last game. I think this is a really good opportunity for him as well, given the fact that what we're looking at with New Orleans, they're not really a great rim protecting team, and they struggle to defend the paint. So to me, I think this is a really good opportunity for Jalen Williams to get into the teeth of the defense, really attack this New Orleans Pelicans squad. Obviously, Trey Murphy's back now, but Trey Murphy's on a little bit of a minutes restriction. I don't expect him to be like fully deployed, and honestly, like he might see a lot more Shea instead of Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams just had 28 PR or 28 points against the Clippers with 8 rebounds, and they have a legitimate center in Ivica Zubac. So I do think that this is a good opportunity for Jalen Williams to kind of build on that success. 26.5 is not high enough, in my opinion, given the upside in both the scoring and in the rebounds, with the way that Oklahoma City is kind of deploying him on offense and defense.
Okay, I like this. There is I don't think the Pelicans have Trey Murphy being back is a little bit concerning, but I assume he's going to have to guard Shea. So
yeah, that's what I think. Yeah,
and if they try and put Brandon Ingram on Jalen, then he's just going to brush past him and score pretty consistently. Ingram doesn't have the muscle to kind of hang with him. I don't know who else they would kind of put on him. I guess we'll see. Fiddle, you like the over in this game? Thunder, everyone was like, boy, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? And then like they've just like looked like OKC. Like they just look like OKC for the most part, just without Chet. Why do you like the over in this spot?
So branching off of Joe's cap and saying that Jalen Williams is the 5, they're playing complete small ball because of cluster injuries. Now, cluster injuries is kind of a unique gambling term, which I think is nice to point out in this context. You're not only missing Chet, you're not only missing Ihart, who still hasn't played his first game, you're also missing big Jalen Williams. So you have all 3 centers out for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So just the loss of Chet doesn't get its typical weight in terms of what it's worth because the replacement option is not there. So you get a cluster injury set where you get each one and each player ends up being worth more to the total or more to the spread because value over replacements, like a unique nerdy baseball stat, but it totally applies in this situation. We are going to see 48 minutes of small ball, and just similar on the Pelican side, they came into the year with like no centers. They're using, sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Yves Missi? How do I pronounce it?
Yves Missi.
He's
Yves
awesome.
Missi. Wait till we start
he is awesome.
Wait till we start the Mathurin conversation. Missi is a rookie and he's 6'11". He's the only big guy out there. I don't think he's going to get 30 plus minutes. This is going to be a heavy small ball game. I thought I was going to be able to give out over 222.5. It's already at 223. We are seeing agreement in the market direction too. This is something I would play anything below 224.
Okay. I like the cluster injury cap on that quite a bit. I think that's a smart approach for how to kind of look at this game. I'm looking at some numbers right now for Chet Holmgren because I was kind of curious about. I looked at his overall numbers. The overall numbers were like, yeah, no, the defense is still good without him. It's not as good. It's not, oh my god, but it's still like, oh, it's pretty good with him. I did want to kind of see what the defense. Yeah, oh boy, yeah. So
Not great.
yeah, I mean, so here's the thing: is like the Thunder's overall defense is good because they run faster, which helps the over. They push the pace, and the other team gets sucked into it, and then they play faster, and so that's why it's there. With Chet on the floor, their half court defense is 9 points better per 100 possessions, and their putbacks defense is 10.3 points better per 100 possessions with Chet on the floor. So that all tracks logically. So I like that quite a bit. I think we can get ourselves a little same game parlay on this one. I'll tell you about that in a second, but first I got to tell you about Tommy John's. We mentioned at the top of the show that we're coming to you from the Tommy John home studios, and that's because great games start with great underwear, and Tommy John makes the greatest. Right now, the shirt I'm wearing at youtube.com/the Action Network underneath this pullover, it's Tommy John's tee because, well, after dinner, I was like, I'm putting on my Tommy John's because it's got to be comfortable at night. It's one of the things that's great about them is you can layer them. So as it gets colder, you can use the Tommy John's as like an undershirt, or you can just wear it when you're just hanging out. It's all awesome. Underwear is super comfortable. The pants are super comfortable. I've talked about them. The best pajama pants I've ever worn. It's this perfect combination of you're not cold, you're not too hot. It's just right. It's absolutely perfect. Remember, when you're truly comfortable, you do everything better, and that includes betting. If you love this Buckets podcast, and if you love our crew here, you're going to love Tommy John's. Get 25% off your first order right now at TommyJohn.com/buckets. Save 25% at TommyJohn.com/buckets. And speaking of, it's time for us to do our Tommy John Ballsy parlay of the night. We're going to do a same game parlay here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take Joe's pick of 25 plus Jalen Williams points and rebounds. We're going to take the over 223.5. And then I got this one. Eve Measy. Over 6.5 rebounds. I looked this up. Joe, Eve Measy has a 13% offensive rebound rate. That is 92nd percentile. We are good to go here with a 6.5. Fast-paced game, lots of putbacks for Measy. I was worried. I was like freaking out about because I had Zubac over 28.5 points and rebounds in the last game versus the Thunder, and he had like 4 points and 2 shots in the first half, and I was like, "What in the hell are you doing, Ty Lue?" But in the second half, like he just got there. The bigs are going to get there versus OKC. This number is still sleeping, so we're going to do over 223.5, over 6.5. Can I get the half point? There, Fiddle on 223.5.
Sure, yeah, I would play this to if the number's below 224.5, I think it's worth playing.
All right, over 223.5, over 6.5. Eve Measy rebounds, Measy's pieces, and 25 plus Jalen Williams points and rebounds. That's a plus 360. You can find that one at DraftKings. All right, Joe, you have another pick for us. Let's get on to. I'm sorry, we have to get the French pronunciation of this from Michael Fiddle.
Yeah, I'm not French, so I've heard French people say it, and I'll only go with the last name because even the Benedict part is unique. But I've heard French people say Mathurin when talking about Benedict Mathurin.
Benny Mathurin. Tell me about Benny Mathurin, Joe Delera.
So Mathurin, guys. So look, Indiana's got some issues in terms of their injuries. Neesmith's out, Nembhard's out, Jackson's out, Wiseman's out, Obi Toppin's questionable for this game. And the biggest thing to me is Nembhard being out. When Nembhard is off the floor, we see a pretty significant jump in Mathurin's usage. And we just saw that kind of come through against the Knicks the other day. He scored 38 points against the New York Knicks. Additionally, he's kind of started to heat up. He started the year off strong. 2 games, 19, 20 points, and all of a sudden he just didn't play. And then I think Carlisle remembered that he's actually really good at scoring the basketball. Since then, 30, 19, 16, 20, 22, 38. This number, I get that this is a tough matchup against the Orlando Magic and what they have defensively, but I think that Mathurin's just raw talent in terms of scoring the basketball is so significant. Plus, you're getting the Magic on the back end of a back-to-back. And realistically, the best defensive option that they have for him, Jalen Suggs, twisted his ankle. I know he finished the game, still had a good game, like 17, 4, and 4. But you never know how that swells up overnight. You never know how that maybe impacts him just like a little bit. And if he's like a half second too slow, that's going to be a problem when you're dealing with not only Tyrese Halliburton, but Benedict Mathurin as well. And they might have to split kind of how and who they use Jalen Suggs to defend anyway. So 18.5 points, it's a number he's gone over in 70% of games this season. And honestly, as long as he's in these past couple games, he's been playing over 30 minutes a game. When he's played over 30 minutes over the past couple of seasons, he's absolutely crushing this line, averaging 22.4 points per game over his last 30 games of 30 plus minutes. Hit this in 20 of those 30 games. So love Mathurin over 18.5 points.
We have a competition going with the guys over at DraftKings on our NBA bet streams. Again, you can catch us on this Pacers Magic game. And so they always do, we do a head-to-head. Joe, I'm going to need you to take Maturin versus whoever it is that our DK guy takes.
I know, I'm going to have to suggest it.
Got to go ahead and sneak it in there. Be like, oh, I don't know. I guess I'll take Mathurin. I guess so. And then we'll go that way. Really quick, I want to mention, so the Suns are going to be playing on the back-to-back versus the Kings. And I have this projected after the KD adjustment. No Nurk tonight in a game that, again, made Fiddle want to throw up. He might play tomorrow because he was questionable. Like, Nurk was like a last-second out, so he might play tomorrow. I have this projected as Suns even after the KD adjustment, but there's this trend. I'm going to stay away from it. I just mostly wanted to bring it up. So whenever I look at trends, I'm trying to get as big a sample as possible with a logic that to me makes sense. Like, I care about the logic of these things more than I care about the sample, although it's like, I don't care if it's like 3 and 2, right? The sample matters. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying that sometimes if I need like the logical definition of it, that's going to make up for some of the sample for me. And then the strength of it. Here's what I found. Since 2013, home favorites after losing by 20 or more, and they are over 500. So they're an over 500 team that lost by 20 or more. And they're a home favorite in the next game. 141, 116, and 4. That's a large sample at 55%. So, like, that's a very good trend for the Kings in this spot. Like, that's a very good spot for the Kings here. That said, like, the number likes the Suns. I only bring this up, Fiddle, to kind of like remark on how you can always find a trend to back aside. That I will say is that I've actually kind of gone the other way, which is I think that one of the things that happens in betting content is I like this side. So I'm going to go find the trends that back up my side. And that to me is like not meaningful data if we have all of these different ones. Because like I found 5 or 6 Suns trends, right? And if you have more trends in one direction, I do think that matters. If you have large sample sizes, I think that that's indicative of probably something. I know that you're not a huge trends better, but it's a matter of my point here is largely that be cautious about trying to find points that support you. And instead, I think if you're going to use trends, which I know you're not big on, but if you're going to use trends, support them in a way that maybe use them to find spots where you can walk away. To be like, I would bet this, but this is not a great spot based off of the trend data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like checking yourself. When you think about player ceilings or player floors, like what's the most this player could score? What's the least this player could score? The realistic outcomes, our ceiling is 80%, floor is 20%. It's never as extreme as you think it's going to be in your mind. So it's like these are ways to check yourselves. And I totally agree with that point, Matt. You could come up with any set of numbers to explain really anything, even outside of the content and betting world. You can use numbers to explain a point and make your statistics and data set seem relevant. It's not always that relevant. If you are playing into trends, I like situational trends more. So like rest spots, reactionary home team stuff. Like, so I think this one is similar to like playing into home team down 0-2 in a playoff series. And if you find certain trends that you like, then continue to play them. Don't be searching for a new trend. Find ones that you're going to consistently back and do that. Don't always be searching for the newest one. And the ones that I find just blatantly incorrect or just bad advice and probably not valuable are the ones that say this player scored over his number in 5 of the last 7, so let's take it again, because that doesn't account for matchup, that doesn't account for other rotations, it doesn't account for the way the books may have been adjusting the prices. Sometimes the books will decrease a Jalen Brunson number because they're playing against the Magic and it's going to be a very low total, so his price prop will come out at like 24.5, and then you're using a sample size where every other prop number was 27.5, and you're like, he's gone over this, blah, 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 blah. But like, has he actually gone over his prop number in context of those situations? So some of those are completely meaningless, but situational ones I think can be used sporadically.
Joe, what do you think about that?
I think that a lot of that is accurate. I think that, we can manipulate data like however we kind of want, right? But I do think that there is an ability to kind of manipulate some of it too and say like, all right, well, I'm looking for this type of information. I'm trying to find what like a similar circumstance. I'm trying to figure out like what happens when this player plays like X amount of minutes or when they are in this particular matchup, because sometimes it's like when before Isaiah Hartenstein was Isaiah Hartenstein, he was on the Clippers and he was like one of my favorite per 36 minute guys. Like when you extrapolated his stats when he was on the Clippers and you extrapolated him to per 36 minutes, it was insane. It was like 20 points, 18 rebounds, and 5 blocks. He's really good, but he's not that good. But like when players play then more minutes, a lot of times it doesn't scale the same way. And I think that can sometimes be one of the mistakes that we make. Like when we say like, all right, well, they've done this in like a 15-minute sample size and now they're going to double it. Like, where do they go? So like, for example, like even what I just talked about with Mathurin, it's like his minutes have expanded and it doesn't scale directly, but it does scale pretty significantly when he sees that uptick in minutes. And like when we manipulate some of the numbers, it's like, hey, like this is what his floor is now. So how does this fit in terms of what we're looking at in terms of this context? So I think that there's always different things that you can add in, and there's always different data points that you can say like, well, this one matters or this one matters, or these are all the ones that I'm looking at. But I think what you kind of mentioned, Matt, in terms of using all these data points and some of the trend data to like essentially temper your cap and temper your expectations is really important, because a lot of times we have thoughts from a basketball perspective and we're like, this should happen because of X, because of literally like the X's and O's. But then when you look at it from like an analytical way, or when you look at it just from a numbers and data point perspective, you're like, like maybe that isn't as strong as I thought it would be. And maybe there's something I'm missing because I'm looking at it through such a basketball minded lens.
Yeah. One more before I get out of here, because I find the two of you, you're just great basketball betting minds to bounce stuff off of. Like, you're so sharp. I found this, and I really can't, I'm going to be totally serious. I cannot believe it. I really can't believe this. So the first 10 games of the season, which we're rapidly approaching, right? We're approaching the 10th games. We'll be almost done with them. But I thought that this was crazy. I looked at East road dogs playing East teams. So you're in the Eastern Conference, you're playing another East team, and you're a road dog. Okay. Line, you're less than a 7-point dog. So you're not like a massive underdog, which the Hawks just won outright tonight. Since 2010, 54%, 138, 118, and 2. Since 2015, 93, 86, and 2, 52%, just under profitability. And since 2020, 54, 35, and 2, it's 61%. So, like, I find it odd that this is held true. And this is one of the things I just kind of generally want to comment on, which is, if you're doing trend data analysis in the NBA, one of the biggest things that I've found this season, if you're doing trends, and you should be careful with them, as we just talked about, separate it up by conference. Fiddle, the market literally treats these two conferences vastly differently. And a lot of that's just because like one conference is going to have, like, of the top 15 in power rating, the West is going to have 10? Like right now they would probably have probably 11 of the top 15 power rated teams are probably in the Western Conference. And so what I'm noticing is in these trends, if you take a trend and it's overall and it's like it's indicative, if you split it east west, you will notice stark differences in how these teams perform. And the reason is, if you're like, yeah, but what does that mean? It's literally the market, the power ratings that determine our ATS number are entirely different for East versus West. And like, to me, that's something that I think bettors should probably be more aware of, is the stark differences in a lot of these numbers for East teams versus West.
I would think that's something that you pointed out to me at the start of this season. And I think it's a pretty smart approach because the conferences are so starkly different right now. We are seeing that in a market cap perspective as well, because these Boston Celtics minus 14.5 is being steamed out to 16. So large favorites in the East are continuously taking steam. Cavaliers, Magic today, even without Paolo, Magic moved from -6 to -8, and they cover against the Hornets. So you're seeing favorites take steam in the East, and you're seeing dogs take steam in the West. So whether that was OKC and the Clippers, even after the Chet news broke, a lot of Clippers steam in the market. Anytime the Houston Rockets are underdogs, they get hammered because of their estimated net rating being so strong. So these spots are very competitive, and so you often see the West get closer to the zero and the East get further from the zero. So I do think there's some truth to that in market approaches as well.
All right, that's going to do it for Buckets. Thanks to David Payne for hanging out with us tonight and getting this up on the podcast, and as well as at youtube.com/The Action Network. Thanks to Brady and the video team over there. You can follow Joe on Twitter and the Action Network app at Joe Delera. Fiddle's at Fiddle's Picks. I'm at HB Basketball. Hope you guys have yourselves a great Wednesday. We'll see you again on Thursday for Best Bets. I'll be doing that one with J Money, so make sure to tune in for that one on tomorrow's show. We'll see you guys again next time. Till then, let's get buckets.